Hey, Beth, how are you? All the way from Barcelona. What a beautiful city. What's the weather like there?
It's usually very nice, not today. Today is a bit cloudy and a bit rainy, but the rest of the days are very good.
Because normally it's a place where everyone goes on holiday. At least if you're from Belgium, then Barcelona is the place to be.
Yes, yes, but May is a weird month. It can rain any day.
Oh, yeah, that's the same here in Belgium.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not here to talk about the weather, but we're here to talk about RegTech, what's much better than the weather. So I met your colleague Max not so long ago, and I was very intrigued by the views and the insights that you bring about RegTech, and more particularly what that means in the fund industry. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more about the article. What have you been writing about?
Well, in this article, we were trying to highlight like the challenges that the fund business has with RegTech, and actually how you can use all the technology developed and all the code developed to satisfy regulations and comply with those regulations to
Mhm.
actually create reports that can target different audiences, not just regulations, but like boards, investors, stakeholders, etc.
Oh yeah, nice, nice. But you mentioned a few terms, and well, I kind of heard them before because I've also been involved in the funds business before. But is it particular to some areas in the funds industry? Because you mentioned AFMD, for example, or is it just something more general that's happening in the fund industry? And what would be the trigger?
Well, it's actually more general because, yeah, we do mention some regulations that we've been involved with, but it's how we can, or us as a business, we can get all the requirements from all the regulations or what we need to do, or,
Hmm.
well, or what our clients need to do, and produce something that can be used and reused for different regulations and for different other purposes, like risk management, for example.
I I see. What I also thought was very intriguing when I was reading the article is it's at a certain point you mentioned that the final stage is the automated reporting process. So what would that mean for you?
Yes, well, because we differentiate the whole process and actually submitting a regulation report in 3 steps, where the first step is the getting the data correctly,
Uh-huh.
which is like the boring part, but super mandatory. The second stage is actually doing the computations and the algorithms, and that's where like analysts like me, for example, is where we like to spend the time.
Hmm.
But then the final stage is actually showing what you have calculated to someone else, in this case, a regulator. So this is the outcome, and it should be the easiest part actually, because you've done all the difficulty in handling all the data, which is
Uh-huh.
always super complex because it's always very dirty, and actually doing all the clever stuff and the maths, and then you actually just want to show that the fund, for example, satisfies what they need to satisfy, and you want to show it in an easy way, and you don't want to spend a lot of time doing that. You want to have it in a way that it's automated and highly customizable, so depending on which type of report you need to do, you just
Hmm.
don't have to redo it again. You just get all the pieces together, and it happens. So that's why the final stage, and that's actually the product that you sell actually.
Hmm. And because yeah, so that's something that you already do. So what are the technological elements that you use in order to make that magic happen?
So well, we have like like everyone else, I suppose, like databases and Excel files and all these things that like where we store data. But then for all the computation and the producing of reports, we use MATLAB, which is mathematical software that has financial packages. And
Uh-huh.
with this, we do all the programming to do the calculations that we need to do, the requirements for the regulations, or for our clients, the kind of algorithms that they would like to do, and the kind of results and plots they would like to see. and then we put that on reports that are like in any output format that we want, like PDF or Microsoft Word or XML, etc.
Mm-hmm. And Pat, what was the first? When was the first time that you heard about RegTech?
The first time, well, before working for Claros Risk, I was working at a software company. So RegTech companies were some of my clients.
Okay.
That's when I started learning about it.
And what would you like particularly about RegTech?
Well, what I like is that it's actually doing the calculations that the regulations require. So what I believe, and now speaking with a non-financial background, is that everything in finance seems a lot more complicated than it actually is. There's a lot of jargon. And when you read regulations of what are the things that funds, for example, need to satisfy or comply with, it looks very complicated, but if you go deep in the maths of what they're doing, it's not so difficult, and I really like maths. So I like applying those algorithms to satisfy the rules, and then being able to program this and being able to show easily, well, this fund satisfies what they need to satisfy or not, etc. I think it's a challenge, but it's really interesting, and I like it. Yeah.
I like it when you say that you like it, because I can really feel the passion when you say your explanation about RegTech, and it's, for me, it's almost a dream that comes true, because you share a passion about doing mathematics that you combine with regulatory thing. I think that's mathematics is a sort of technology. I'm making some bridges here, but so considering that now you know a bit of both, if I may say, would you consider yourself more in love with reg or more in love with tech?
Well, myself, I'm more in love with tech than with reg, but I think the combination is what makes it more interesting.
No, absolutely. And if you look at, we talked about Barcelona as a nice city to go on holiday. What's the RegTech scene like in Barcelona or in Spain in general?
Well, in Barcelona, I know that there's a bit, but it's not the main city for RegTech. I think Madrid has more of the finance industry in Spain, and therefore the RegTech. But because RegTech is more like a new thing, like these are new companies, they're new startups. So yeah, there are some here, because Barcelona is more of a hub for this kind of new technological companies.
Oh yeah. And then do you sometimes go to Madrid to go and meet those new companies, or?
I haven't actually. I've been more going to London, basically. Yes.
Which is not a bad thing either, right?
No, I like it.
No, indeed. What was actually your first reaction when I think through Matt to Max, sorry, that you heard about the RegTech book? What did you think about the RegTechBlackbook?
My first reaction?
Yeah.
Well, I was surprised. I didn't expect that we were going to participate in something like this, but I think it's really cool. Yeah.
Nice. Well, that's always expect the miracles to happen, right?
Yeah, well, I think that we have something to say. We've been involved in this for a while, and especially we've been producing reports for a long time for different funds, and we've done a lot of regulatory work, especially the last 2 years. And at least we have some experience to share. So
but that's exactly.
People might be interested in knowing what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. No, talking about, because we talked a bit before about your career, that you come from a mathematical background.
Yes.
Would you have changed something if you could start over again, knowing that today we got this RegTech community happening?
If I would have changed something in terms of what I did or what I studied? Yeah, possibly. when I was studying, I wasn't really sure what I was gonna do in the future, so I touched different fields, completely different fields, and maybe I should have focused a bit more on the financing and statistics fields, where I deviated a bit from it. I did a bit, and then I went back. But yeah, knowing where I'm working now and that I really enjoy it, maybe I should have focused a bit more on that.
Yeah. Is it yeah, that's sometimes so strange, right? Because a lot of youngsters or the younger generation seems to have a difficulty to grasp that emotion and energy that's happening in our banking industry more widely, right?
Yeah, possibly. And because I did maths, and math is such a huge field, like you can apply it to absolutely everything. I didn't know where I would apply it, and especially now with all this big data thing coming on and all the data that has a lot of statistics, that's actually the future for everything. But at that point when I was studying, maybe I was not thinking about about the future that much. I should have, but anyway, I reached here, and I think it's
glad to
very
have
good.
you on board. Glad to have you on board. Last question. A very famous one for all those listeners that have been listening to all the other interviews. So why should people contact you, Pat? What's the main reason they need to pick up the phone and talk to you?
Well, I think we have a very interesting product, because if a fund needs to submit or comply with a particular regulation, and therefore they will have to have specific data and specific calculations that they need to do. If we have that data, not only we will be able to satisfy like the reporting solution that they need for that particular regulation, but we using the same data and other algorithms or some of our expertise, we can produce other type of reports that they can reuse for other things. So without having to redo the same thing over and over again, we can produce analysis and reports that can target different audiences, being different regulations, being risk management, being the boards of directors or their investors that they're interested in more transparency of what they're doing. So the idea is to reuse everything, reuse data, reuse algorithms, reuse calculations, because some of them are very common, and then we can produce without having to change, just by the click of a button, different report types that they can use for different things.
Yeah. So in other words, you make it more scalable as a solution, and you make it more widely available for multi-purposes.
Exactly, and more customizable, because maybe they want different outputs for different audiences, or different logos, or different color maps, depending on who's gonna see the result, that final stage, which is actually the result of what everything that has been aggregated, computed, and analyzed.
No, that's a clear message. So I'd like to thank you again. Thank you very much for your contribution.
You're very welcome. I really enjoyed it.
Me too. So again, looking forward to hear more about the many content that you guys produce. So looking forward to get more insights how the regulatory framework around funds industry is changing. And for the listeners of the book, feel free to take a look at the website that will come very soon after this. So thank you very much again, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.